Mayors of America, welcome, and thank you so much for joining us for our winter meeting. I want to welcome and thank Tom Cochran, the Executive Director of the U.S. Conference of Mayors, Mayor Stephen Benjamin, who is our first Vice President, Mayor Brian Barnett, our second Vice President, fellow mayors from across America, representing 85% of the Americans that live in this spectacular country. We are really thrilled to be here at our 86th winter meeting. This week we are here to learn from each other, talk to each other, share best practices, and also to help the folks in Washington understand cities and to again present ourselves as a willing, constructive, and able partner in governing the United States of America. We are really here to engage and to lead. This week we are going to and have already met with members of Congress from both parties, business leaders, community and civil rights leaders. We just finished a great meeting with the business community, our civil rights organizations, as well as mayors from across America. We are having the hard conversations about what it takes to solve problems that Washington, unfortunately, can't even begin to touch on. Detailed and difficult discussions about infrastructure, what it means, how much, who pays, who gets the benefit, how it helps stand up all Americans, and how we can all go forward together and not leave anybody behind. The same issues with jobs, health care, immigration, security, safety, our first priorities, and of course equity, to make sure that unless we all go forward together, we can't go forward at all. On any of these issues, I would lay odds that if we put 5 Democratic mayors and 5 Republican mayors in a room, they will come up with a path forward that is pragmatic and bipartisan, fast enough to make your head spin, in a way that grows our economies and treats every community in our cities and towns with the respect that they deserve. America's cities, you see, are the backbone of this great country. This is a fact. It's not a political theory. We are 86% of the population, 91% of the GDP. We hold 88% of the country's jobs, and we are where future generations want to live and raise families. And we do this in concert with and in great respect for all of our brothers and sisters that live in rural areas, and we know that we, in fact, depend on each other for our livelihoods, our job, our culture, and, of course, our values and our way of life. On this issue and on issues after issues, it is America's mayors who have stood up for what's smart and what's right. We don't have the luxury of cherry-picking any single particular issue. They all happen on the streets of American cities all at the same time and are never isolated. One pushes the other one, and it circles back and hits you where you don't expect. Here is what we have learned. Americans right now see chaos, confusion coming from Washington, D.C., and it causes anxiety. On the streets of America, working families want their leaders to focus on solutions that will lead to better opportunities for their families to succeed. Regardless, mayors are forced with no choice but to govern. And we have to govern in real time, and we have to govern in reality, based in fact, sometimes even in spite of what's happening in Washington, D.C. Later today, we'll spend time with our Women Mayors Alliance to discuss the pertinent issues that are coursing across America today. And we all look forward to that conversation as well. But we're not just having the conversations, we're going to work. We have a united group of bipartisan mayors. We are modeling exactly how public service can impact communities, and we're working with each other to affect working people's lives. And we're trying to show constructive leadership and engagement and hope to find partners in Washington willing to get the job done. Our priorities, because we cannot do everything, but the ones that we want to focus on is ensuring the safety and security of all of our communities. This is our highest and our first priority. Fixing our crumbling infrastructure in a meaningful way to build resilience and give people hope, opportunity, and consequently freedom. Expand our workforce to drive economic growth so that everybody participates in a growing economy. And finally, to create equitable communities to increase opportunity for all. So, for example, on the infrastructure bill, which is supposed to be at the top of our agenda, we really have to talk about what it is. In cities big and small, there is a $5 trillion infrastructure deficit in the United States of America that makes us uncompetitive with some of our competing international partners as well as on the streets of America. We have to talk about making sure that that money gets to the people who actually know how to spend it well, on time, on task, and under budget. And those individuals are standing behind me today. They do that every day, all day, and are already investing more money than Congress has invested over time. At the end of the day, it's important that we all work together, that we display courage, and that we have one accord for the American people. And I am really thrilled and proud to be standing with what I consider to be the best leaders in America, and hope that over the next couple of days we can engage in these difficult discussions of all of the issues that affect our citizens, so that America can be free and proud and a hopeful country. So I thank you. I now want to call Mayor Stephen Benjamin as our first Vice President, to be followed by Mayor Brian Barnett, and then to be followed by Mayor Emanuel, Mayor Garcetti, and Mayor Elizabeth Couts. Thank you so much. Mayor Benjamin.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Great to see you. Thank you.
Mitch, I want to thank you and thank our entire leadership team, and certainly our Executive Director, Tom Cochran, for convening us this week. I want to encourage, I know I saw Mayor Tecklenburg, Mayor Reichert, all the mayors. It's hot in here, it's packed. It's not going to get any less packed or less hot based on the day so far. I want to encourage y'all to come up front. America needs to see exactly what we have assembled here. Come up front so the cameras can catch each and every one of you. It's always a pleasure to be in the company of all of our colleagues and men and women who are getting things done across party lines, consistently showing up to do the work of the American people. I want to welcome all of our newly elected colleagues. You will see dozens of men and women of both parties and independent from all across this country who are excited about getting the work of America done as well. As a nation, no doubt we are living in turbulent times, but cities and the wonderful people who live in them, we cannot sit idly by while Washington decides what it wants to do and who it wants to do it for. So whether we're talking about the nearly 800,000 dreamers who deserve a more certain future and an opportunity to live and work in our cities, whether we're talking about our efforts to address infrastructure, significant $5 trillion worth of infrastructure needs all across this country to make sure we remain the strongest and most powerful nation in the history of the world. If we're talking about gun safety or climate change, mayors roll up their sleeves every single day to get the job done. We know that when partisan politics and divisive rhetoric become the starting point for every conversation, we all pay the price. It's mayors who are left standing there as we attempt to help our communities make sense of what is not happening in Washington, D.C., having to explain how an abundantly wealthy country can behave at times so morally bankrupt. As mayors, we can wrap our arms around sensible legislation that does not hurt hardworking Americans, that doesn't shift the burden of costs on local government, and doesn't cause irreversible damage to our communities, our schools, public safety, and so much more. So over the next few days, I encourage you, some of you are here just for this press conference, some of you will be here over the next several days. You will see problem solving in action. You will see men and women from all across this country, from coast to coast and across the Pacific, as far away as Hawaii and Alaska, working as a governing body to produce real policy to address real issues. And we'll leave Washington, regardless of what may come, with renewed commitment to leading our cities and leading this great country. I want to thank you all for being here and yield the microphone to my friend, Mayor Brian Barnett, the mayor of Rochester Hills, Michigan, the second vice president of the U.S. Conference of Mayors. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I want to thank the leadership of Mayor Landrieu and Mayor Benjamin for getting us all here, and certainly thank the United States Conference of Mayors and its CEO, Tom Cochran, for all of the logistical support. This is not as easy as it might look. You know what else is not easy sometimes is navigating Washington. It certainly isn't easy for the American people, and at times it isn't easy for even elected mayors. But one thing mayors, I think, are exceptional at is staying laser-like focused on the objectives and the priorities of the people we represent. And for this conference, that means focusing on issues like innovation and immigration and infrastructure. And there are no better people, as Washington often looks for solutions to issues like infrastructure, than the people that I'm gathered with here shoulder to shoulder, because they understand, as Mayor Landrieu said, how to get jobs done on time, on budget, delivering results for their people. Mayors don't have the luxury of rhetoric that is often so common here in this particular city. We deal in the world of results. We have to deliver. And what we will focus on over the next several days in a tremendously bipartisan fashion is making sure those focused items that that draw us all here together, whether we come from large cities or small cities, urban ring communities or urban centers themselves, stay at the top of that agenda. We'll part through the noise and make sure we're continuing to deliver for the people that have elected us. It's my privilege to continue to work with these mayors, as I think you'll see some good things happen in the next couple of days. As Washington looks for solutions, I tell you those solutions are standing beside me, and we look forward to great conversation over the next couple of days. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Now, Rahm Emanuel.
Washington looks for solutions, and sometimes they look away from solutions and look away from them. I want to thank everybody for being here. None of us can afford a government shutdown. Our residents would not afford that or allow us to have that. And we are here about building a future, and one of the conversations we just had as a group of mayors is about what we call inclusive economic growth. In the city of Chicago, we are going from a kindergarten to high school model to a pre-K to college model. And you're going to have to start earlier in life and go longer to succeed. We cannot have an economy or a city with one future in one city if not everybody has the educational tools to succeed in that economy. You can be proud of all your statistics, but if you're not, and you do not have a passport to that economy, which is an education, it is not an economy that embraces your future and inclusion. And we are now well on our way in the city of Chicago, where we now have, if you get a B average in high school, community college is free. If you keep the B average, every university of the 17 colleges in the city of Chicago offer you somewhere between 25 to 40% off of tuition. So parents do not have to have a second job or a second mortgage to give their children a chance of the American dream. We created universal full-day kindergarten and well on our way to universal pre-K. To me, that is a key component, which we will be talking about, how to ensure, regardless what neighborhood of the 77 wealthy and great neighborhoods in the city of Chicago, regardless of what neighborhood you're from, you know through your education that's your passport to a future. That's inclusive economic growth. And in that spirit of inclusiveness, and we were just talking about this as a group, the city of Chicago was always, and I say this both as a son and a grandson of immigrants, the city of Chicago has always been a welcoming city, whether you traveled the Atlantic, the Pacific, the Rio, or the Mississippi. You saw the promise that your children could have a better life, and through sacrifice and struggle, you gave it to them. And Chicago Star Scholarship is open to dreamers. It's the only public scholarship that a dreamer can get in the United States of America. And the idea, well, it is while I'm here. And the idea that you would actually, in a city of Chicago, which was the only city back in the Civil War that did not participate in the Fugitive Slave Act. It was the first welcoming city in the United States. And the city of Chicago will not turn its back on people who believe for their children America still is a place of promise. And the idea that the President of the United States and the Justice Department would arrest any one of us for believing in our ideals and carrying out the law of our city is wrong, fundamentally wrong. And as a former chief of staff, those meetings with the president are supposed to be about bringing together and doing exactly what my colleague just said, how to find solutions to problems, not to put 23 people on notice that they could be arrested for believing in America. It is my great honor now to introduce a very good friend, Eric Garcetti from Los Angeles.
Thank you so much, Mayor Emanuel, for your powerful words, and thank you to our leadership, Mitch Landrieu especially, who has been such a great and strong president of this group for this period of time that is defining this nation. Thank you, Mitch, for all that you have done. I'm so excited to be here. Whenever I see this many mayors, I get very excited, because mayors aren't engaged in partisan warfare. We're engaged in practical work. We're not folks that want to go to the circus. We want to get into the trenches. We are people who every single day reflect the values of this country and have the trust of Americans. Think about that. 90% of the population live in towns and cities in America. And we have the trust because people know local leaders can't fix everything overnight, won't make, magic in a single day. But we are interested as residents of those very same communities in building more promise and more potential across this nation. If this was a conference coming to Washington 30 years ago, we might have been coming here to ask Washington to save America's cities. As people were leaving cities and cities were even burning, as schools were being vacated. The opposite is happening. People are coming back to cities in America. So my message to Washington is very clear. Washington, we are here to save you. We are here to come here to make sure the values of this country and the progress of this nation are matched and are met. We have, unfortunately, a politics defining itself, as we see here today, by what they can take away from the American people and how they can divide us. They want to divide us up here, but we won't be divided. We judge our success by what we add and how we multiply our successes. We share those stories. I want to share the stories in Los Angeles. I'm excited to bring the Summer Games back to America for the first time in 30 years in Los Angeles. I'm excited to talk about how, while Washington is finally talking about infrastructure, and we welcome it, from the White House to Congress, we've been passing $250 billion of infrastructure, a number larger than what they're going to start with, we understand, in our cities on our own. And it's time for Washington to match us, to have our tax dollars that we pay to this town come back to our communities to make sure we rebuild our bridges and our streets and our public transportation and our water systems and our electrical grid. So as we move forward here today, we may see some people who send out tweets, but we're fixing the streets. We're going out there taking politics seriously as something that we want to see get things done. And we've had to often help each other out. Ram, today we may have to bail each other out. But these threats make no, I'm glad to hear that.
I'll contribute.
Thank you.
It comes with a 10% interest.
These threats, I want to say this too, are nothing short of a distraction. Because when you're threatening people with things that aren't going to happen, if you don't listen to the police professionals of this nation as we do every day and understand how best to serve immigrant communities, if you're too pro-family to want to see families broken up by destructive immigration policies, if you're too pro-economy to stop the entrepreneurs, be they women who have been shut out for too long or immigrants who are part of founding our nation's new economy, then sure, distract this country from your lack of work, but the mayors are getting back to it. También un poco en español, just 2 sentences en español. Estamos aquí con los alcaldes y los líderes de este país. Y tengo mucho orgullo con mis colegas aquí, porque en este momento, con las distracciones, con inmigración, con nuestros dreamers, necesitamos haber acción. No solamente palabras, pero acción. Y estos líderes son la reflexión y la cara de este país en el futuro y este mundo hoy. Muchísimas gracias.
Thank you, Mayor Landrieu, for your leadership. And you've heard from all of the powerful mayors who have spoken to what we're here to do in Washington. We come together because we are a nonpartisan organization, and we are here to help each other. We're here to stand together with one another. You've heard about all of the challenges that we face, and we will take it up because that's what we do as mayors. We solve problems. We make things work for our people. And all of those people who live in our communities, all of us came to this country as immigrants, each and every one of us except for the Native Americans. And so we are grateful for this country and for being welcomed by the Native Americans. Today, we will be addressing an issue that is of great importance to our nation, and that is about women and women's voices. And it is time that the women of the U.S. Conference of Mayors and our colleagues who stand with us, our male colleagues who stand with us and say, yes, that women's voices need to be heard. I'm proud to be part of that movement. I'm proud to be part of supporting the voices of women and to see women excel in leadership, in elected office, in the C-suites of America, in the boardrooms of America, in nonprofit organizations. We have something to offer. We, women, bring something different to the table. And together, we can make great things happen, both the patriarchs and the matriarchs of this nation. And we stand together because we are mayors, proud to be mayors, and we know how to get things done. We balance our budgets, or our people will get to us. We make sure that I came here after a huge snowstorm in Minnesota. I'm a Minnesota mayor. And we know how to clean streets, because if we don't get those snow removal vehicles out on the streets, we will hear from our constituents. Washington doesn't know that. And we are 24/7. When something happens in our community, they don't call Washington. They don't call the legislators in our state. They call the mayors. And so we get things done. And I am so proud to be standing here with my colleagues to work together for the good of the people that we serve and for the good of this nation and its economic vitality, and for each and every person who lives in this great country of ours. God bless America. God bless America's mayors.
Amen. Thank you. All right.
Mayors, thank you for all of your comments. There is an elephant in the room, and I'm going to address it now. One thing that the people of America should understand really clearly about the people standing around me is, number one, we represent the totality and the beauty and the diversity of the United States of America. We are Republican and Democrat. We are rich and poor. We represent every corner of this great nation. The second thing is this, is that mayors run to the fire. We never run away from the fire because people's lives depend on it. And so, unfortunately, while we were preparing to come to this press conference, the White House decided to engage in what is going to be a total distraction for a minute, but you're going to watch the mayors of America get back to work and figure out solutions to problems from infrastructure to equity to education to health care to immigration reform. So let me say a couple of things. Everybody knows by now that the Department of Justice has just issued a letter. I have not had the chance to read the entirety of it, but the gist of it is that they have raised the issue of sanctuary cities once again. They have threatened cities in the United States of America with funds for law enforcement, homeland security, and any other kind of federal funds that they may have. And in some instances, it's been either been intimated by Mr. Holman and or the Attorney General that they should put the mayors of America in jail for following the Constitution of the United States. I can't ever recall a time in the history of America where this has happened, number one. Number two, I can't ever recall a situation where someone who professes to want to work with other people punches them in the face first and says, now I'd like to talk to you. We are at the United States Conference of Mayors. Almost every year that we're here, we're invited to the White House as a conference to talk. This year, that did not happen. Individual mayors were, in fact, invited, but we were not invited as a conference, and we were supposed to go to the White House this afternoon at 3 o'clock. Some mayors will attend that meeting, some mayors will not. And let me say at the outset that we all do not agree in this room on the pathway forward on immigration. It is worth noting, however, that if the President of the United States and Congress would do their job, we wouldn't be having this discussion at all. And if they enacted comprehensive immigration reform, the country would be better off for it. But now, thank you. But we find ourselves standing at this moment in a very awkward place. And it's worth noting just for a second about how we got here and why we got here. You see, if we had an issue like this between and amongst us, we would meet in a room and hash it out respectfully and then come out with a pathway forward. We would certainly not invite somebody to our house for lunch and then excoriate them on the front porch in front of the entire country. My mama taught me better than that. And Mr. President, I'm assuming yours did too. And so now as we stand here, we have 23 of our mayors that are now under threat of prosecution because of something that the president has called sanctuary cities. Now, for those of you in this room who have followed this issue, you know that there is no definition in federal law for the term sanctuary city. It does not exist. And so in a country that prides itself on due process and notice, it's impossible to violate a law that does not exist. First thing. Secondly, it is the priority of every mayor who's standing with me to make sure that their citizens and everybody that's in that city are safe. Public safety is our #1 priority, and there is not a mayor in America that would not put a person that committed a violent crime in jail who threatens anybody that's anywhere around anything that we do. That's correct. The third thing that I'd like to note for you is that under this administration, and what Congress has recently done, they actually cut funds to Homeland Security and public safety and made it harder for us to protect our cities. And if this administration wants to talk to the mayors of America and the police chiefs of America about how to make America safe, we're very interested in having that discussion every day, all day. But what we are not willing to do is to stand idly by when you threaten the mayors of America for following the Constitution of the United States. And an attack on one of our major American cities or our small cities is an attack on all of us. And it is very important for the President and Congress to understand that. I have personally met with the Attorney General at least 3 times on this issue, and the Department of Justice and the Department of Homeland Security has not to this day come forward with a constructive way to solve this particular problem. And I am sorry, Mr. President, that you and Congress couldn't figure out how to handle the DACA issue last week, but the last thing you should do is now visit that upon the heads of mayors of America who are on the streets every day trying to save American citizens and everybody else, irrespective of their immigration status, because it's our job to save lives, and we think we do it really well. With that, please let me call on anybody who might have a question about anything that was said today, including the statement that I just made. Yes. Isaac. I'm going to let a number of mayors who are on that list speak to it. In the city of New Orleans, I actually had an opportunity to force the Attorney General to say publicly that they were wrong about the city of New Orleans. And I want to be clear with the people of the United States of America. What the Department of Justice has asked cities to do is to violate the Constitution. Mayors of America want to comply with the Constitution, but this is a problem for Congress, not the mayors of America. Every mayor of America and every police chief every day, the #1 priority is to make the streets of America safe, and that is what we have been doing. So we will take up this issue in a forthright way. But I just want to set this out clearly for the people of America as they watch what just happened. What could have happened was, would you guys please come to the White House so we can have a constructive discussion about immigration reform, DACA, and by the way, we'd like to talk about sanctuary cities and have a very thoughtful but provocative and tough conversation that may or may not include salty language about any particular issue. That actually is the way that we do things. One thing that we never do is invite people into a comfortable space and then somehow out in the front go throw a bomb so that the conversation starts off in a negative way rather than a positive way. That's not a way, irrespective of what anybody's position might be, to get to a thoughtful answer for the American public. So we're now just talking about how you model behavior and leadership and courage to get to yes, because Washington and this president is great at getting to no. The mayors around this room are trying to get to yes. So putting the issue itself aside, just the process doesn't work for us. Secondly, on the issue itself, we're going to have mayors of America who have now have a bullseye on their back come up and speak specifically to what their thoughts are about this and be happy to answer any questions you would have. And I have a sneaking suspicion that Mayor Emanuel is going to be the first up. I said, we're not on the list, I don't think.
As the first city on that list, first of all, you should know we filed a suit against the Justice Department, one in the lower court, circuit court, won another opinion from that circuit court judge, and just last Friday was in front of the appellate judge. And the ruling as it related to Chicago and as being what I refer to as a welcoming city is actually of national import. It's not just reflective of Chicago. Second is not only the value system as it relates to, I think, the promise of America the opportunity that through sacrifice and struggle your kids can have a better future, let alone that the city of Chicago has 140 languages spoken in its public school system. I will never allow those kids and their families to note that the city is not behind them and their future and their sacrifice, and make it worthy. The city is clear on its law, and what is even more damaging, I want to underscore something Mitch and Eric and everybody else who's spoken on this has said. We all operate with community policing, where you build a relationship between the law enforcement community, the residents, in working together to reduce public safety threats and working together to build trust. You cannot do that if you drive a wedge between any immigrant community and the law enforcement. It is contrary to public safety, it's contrary to the values of our nation, and it's contrary to the ideals and the law as we establish. And the idea that you are also going to take leaders, mayors, and put them in legal and criminal jeopardy because there's a disagreement where, in fact, the courts already ruled, both in our case and I think also in the California case in San Francisco, contrary to the Justice Department. It is really an amazing take for the Attorney General to disregard what the court system has already said uniformly from coast to coast. I count the third coast in the Midwest as a coast to coast.
Mayor Garcetti.
I'm sorry.
So, each one of the mayors up here cares more about the public safety of our people than anybody living outside of our cities. There's not a single mayor in this country who says, please, if you're a criminal, come on over. And if you're undocumented, bonus points. This is a myth, and it's pure politics. And let's be clear about what this is. It's the politics of distraction and destruction. Why is it destruction? I'll give you two examples. This president's very obsessed with a gang called MS-13. We know a thing or two about it in Los Angeles, where it was born. We've cut gang crime by more than half in Los Angeles. We saw a further reduction this year. Our homicides were down. We have built the trust that Rahm Emanuel mentioned that all of these mayors have to do every single day with our immigrant community. And we actually took down in a big operation we've worked on for 2.5 years with our federal partners. Don't believe we don't actually work well together on the ground to take down some of those leaders even further in our city. Now, ironically, this administration cut the grants and is threatening to cut further grants that we literally use to hire the cops that go after MS-13. How perverse is that? Somebody who says, therefore, going after gangs that prey on our communities, taking the money away from our police to do that. Second point, we all know police officers, the worst call we can get is when a police officer has been shot. I got that call this December. It was actually an immigrant to our country, a Korean woman who dreamed of coming to America, came here for college a few years ago, and then dreamed of becoming a Los Angeles Police Department officer, Joy Park. And she was out on a traffic stop with her partner when somebody leaned out a window and shot 9 bullets towards them, and one of them hit her. Luckily, it hit her in the leg. And because she's strong and because our entire community rallied around her, she's out of the hospital and recovering today. But we got that cop killer, would-be cop killer, in minutes because there was trust with a highly immigrant community in the area just west of downtown Los Angeles, many of them probably undocumented, as our police chief said, who said he went that way, he's in that store, and we got him. Listen to police officers. They know what works. You can threaten subpoenas, you can threaten arrests, and we will keep abiding by the Constitution and keeping our people safe.
Thank you. Does anybody, just before we get off of this topic, again, I want to just stress that not every mayor in this conference is on the same page as it relates to immigration. Everybody may have a difference of opinion, but my guess is we're not far off on the way that we ought to be treating this issue and the individuals that are trying to follow the Constitution. I do want to give a chance to any other mayor that wants to speak on this specific issue right now because I know we have other questions. Anybody else? Yeah, Mayor Adler. Yes. Mayor Fisher and Mayor Adler. Thank you.
I'm Greg Fisher, the mayor of Louisville, and we are on this list. And I just want to emphasize what we've been saying locally. There is no conflict with being in compliance with federal law, being a welcoming city, and supporting our local police. And this false narrative that continues to be put forth by the federal government and many of our state governments continues to divide our country when the bedrock of America has always been built on people trusting each other in the hopes of a better tomorrow. And without this trust as an essential part of our system and our societies, we have to fight every day. We also expect a certain level of competence from elected officials. This notice today is insisting that people send proof that they are in compliance with federal law, and I would bet that many of us up here have already done that. So perhaps the mailbox at DOJ should be checked so that they can see the mayors of America are going about doing their job, responding when required, and getting about the business of growing our city for all of our citizens.
Thank you. Mayor Adler from Austin.
Come on, Texas.
Steve Adler, Austin, Texas. We're not on the list, and I think that's because we're involved right now in court action with our state on a recently adopted statute in Texas. But Mr. President, there's one additional messaging point I think is real important for the media to understand. This whole immigration debate, as you recall, began with a political and rhetorical effort to make us afraid of one another. It was about dividing us. It was about making us fear one another based on lies and things that were just not true. So this began with the presumption or the belief or the suggestion that immigrant communities were somehow or another dangerous, and we had to fear the immigrant members of our populations, of our communities, when in fact the incidence of crime in immigrant populations around the country and in our cities is lower than it is in the general population. And in fact, the incidence of crime among undocumented immigrant populations is lower than it is among the general population. In fact, if you were really serious about trying to lower the general incidence of crime in the country, one way you could do it would be to invite in more immigrants, because it would average down that number. That is the rhetorical and political device to make us afraid of one another is dangerous.
Thank you.
Thank
Steve.
you.
Yeah, identify yourself. Sure.
Can I just add, I'm on the list.
Okay, come on.
My name's Ted Wheeler. I'm the mayor of Portland, Oregon. I have to say, this is one of the most disappointing actions from a White House in my lifetime. And the reason it is so disappointing to me is that it demonstrates a lack of a moral compass in the leadership of the United States of America. It is not only insulting that the Attorney General would send a notice to us here today, knowing that we are coming here and knowing that there is a delegation going to the White House to have a conversation with the President and the President's senior staffers. It is more than insulting. It is dangerous for a White House, for any White House, to threaten duly elected leaders who are following the law and following the United States Constitution with arrest is unconscionable. And the people of this country should hold Jeff Sessions and the White House accountable for this action. They need to know that this is not what the people of the United States of America agree to. This is not the value of America. This is not who we are fundamentally as a people, and we will not stand for it.
I'm Kathy Sheehan. I'm the mayor of the city of Albany, New York. And I just want to echo that this attempt to make us fear our immigrant communities is not only wrong, but in the city of Albany in any way, immigrants are far more likely to be victims of crime than to be perpetrators of crime. And if we do not engage in the community policing that we engage in, that encourages that community to come forward, that encourages them to make their voices heard and to not be in fear our communities will be weaker places and more dangerous places. And so the work that we are doing on the street as mayors with our police chiefs, understanding our communities, is incredibly important in keeping those communities safe. And I would call upon the White House and the Department of Justice to sit down and talk to us, because we do work with our friends in the federal government. We do want to ensure that our cities are safe. And we have a few things that they might be able to learn by simply sitting down and speaking with us. Thank you.
All right, hang on. No, hang on, just, Isaac, hang on just a second, if I might. As I told you, we're not going to let President Trump or the Attorney General keep us off balance or off focus on all of the other issues that we are going to work on in the next couple of days. So we're going to do that. I'm gonna say two things, and then we're going to turn to questions about other issues. If you want to speak directly to mayors, I'm sure they'll all be around and be available for comment. Mr. President, I want you to hear this clearly. We will not be divided, and we will not be intimidated. And if you and Congress do their job, you should be able to fix this problem. That's immigration, because we speak plainly and authentically too. That's pretty plain. The second thing on infrastructure, go big or go home. Yes. That's our position on infrastructure. And if you want to hear our position on other issues, let us get back to work. I'm sure courthouses are going to be full this afternoon with injunctions are going to be filed by every city, but do not tread on the Constitution by threatening duly elected officials who are doing everything we can every day to keep the citizens of the United States safe. Thank you guys very much. If you have questions about other topics, we'll take them now. Otherwise, hit your other mayors individually. Isaac, if you don't mind. Yes?
You mentioned infrastructure. The president's infrastructure package is supposed to be out before the end of the month. What is one thing you would like to see included in that bill?
Well, I would like it to work.
Yeah.
We have a $5 trillion infrastructure deficit in America, and I think that's probably a light estimate. The president correctly said when he was running as a candidate with everybody else that America is getting beaten around the world and at home by not having infrastructure that works. Our sewer, water, drainage systems, our schools, our roads, our bridges, our ports, our airports need a lot of help. And the president's recommendation is throw less than 5% at the problem and take it from funds that otherwise help cities stand up. So, I mean, from our perspective, we think that that's a very difficult place to start if, in fact, you want to, quote, unquote, solve the problem. Because you're looking at a bunch of people whose job it is to solve the problem, not just put a Band-Aid on it and call it something else. And so we want to engage on this issue in a constructive way, which is one of the reasons why what happened just a minute ago is so devastating, because it's hard to engage in constructive conversations about other issues when you're dealing in a non-constructive way with this issue. Mayor Emanuel has a comment.
I just want to say one thing on this, and that is, first, $200 billion for a $1 trillion goal is fairy dust. It's not real. And I also think that the two issues are related. And the President of the United States and his administration purposely issued the subpoenas today as we were heading because they did not want to have a conversation about infrastructure. And we all would see that the emperor wears no clothes when it comes to his plan. That is what's going on. There is no infrastructure plan and there's no resources, and you cannot do the type of investments we need to do that all of us collectively do. And you're going to find out that his plan, the emperor wears no clothes. And that's exactly, these two are related because he did not want to have a serious conversation on how to build, whether it works on runways, roads, or rails. We actually have to make that happen here, and their plan doesn't actually fund the future of America.
Anybody? Yep.
Mayor Landrieu, will you be attending the meeting at the White House this afternoon, and what do you hope comes out of that meeting regardless?
I will not. He asked me if I'm going to be attending that meeting today. I will not go to that meeting. I was planning on attending. We had been in communication with some of the White House staffers about having a constructive meeting this afternoon. Individual members have been invited, but the conference has not. As I said at the outset, typically the protocol has always been for every president, going back as far as we can, that the conference and all of the mayors in the conference would get invited. The White House, for whatever their reason, which is of course their prerogative, chose to invite a certain group of individual mayors that I had a good sense was a cross-section of the conference, but certainly not more than a third or 40% of us. I think a lot of us intended to go, notwithstanding the fact that we have a conflict because we got notice from the White House late, and many of us intended to go. I cannot, in good conscience, as President of the United States Conference of Mayors, go to a meeting under false pretenses to talk about infrastructure and have this letter issued today at 12 o'clock when the White House fully knew that what we were doing and how we were doing it. I don't think that that would send the right message, and as I said, an attack on one of our city's mayors who have followed the Constitution is an attack on all of us, so I will not be attending the meeting. I do think, however, that it's perfectly acceptable for individual mayors who may want to go for their own particular reasons that may have a difference of opinion about this to actually go to the White House, because I think generally as a matter of protocol, if you get invited, that you should go. I think the circumstances of 12 o'clock change that equation for some of us, and especially me. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
All right, you guys. Thank you.
Will other mayors be boycotting, or other mayors skipping?
Not going.
Not going.
Not going.
Not going. Not going.
Not going.